I'm Dr. Jon Dabach, and today we're going to be talking about how men, when you're dating, should not talk about sex. I've seen this happen with men as young as 15, 14, right? And they're just getting into sexually experimenting and dating. And sometimes people would say that's too young to date in general. And I've seen it with men as old as being in their 50s. Men, many men, not all men, but many men rush into talking about sex with women. First thing I'm going to tell you is all women know you want sex. So you don't have to bring it up for them to know that you're interested sexually. If you ask them out on a date and you've paid for dinner, there is an assumption, I promise you, that they know you're interested in them sexually. You don't have to bring it up. You don't have to mention it, right? For them to understand that you're interested, that you're attracted to them. The fact that you're there, that you're groomed, hopefully you're wearing some nice deodorant and cologne, you've, cleaned up your face a bit, you've run a comb through your hair, you are not wearing torn and dirty clothes, you're actually showing up respectfully. That is enough. That is enough to get women to know. You need to learn to read the room. No one wants to hear about your fantasies over appetizers. It puts a lot of pressure on women. It makes them feel objectified. And so talking about sex has a lot of negative repercussions for men. So what should you, and I'm not, yes, the title of the video is Never Talk About Sex. You should talk about sex at some point in the relationship. And I'll explain where. But when you're dating initially, it's not the time. So what should you be doing? You should be focusing on connection, right? Most women, when they're dating, want to feel like they have a potential partner, or that there's an emotional connection or a physical connection sometimes if they're a little bit more kind of liberal in their approach to dating, but they want a connection. And the connection isn't about talking about lewd acts that you're going to do. The connection is, do you share my values? What's your view of the world? How do you act socially? What do you think of your family? Right? I'm not talking about people who just date to hook up. So if you're on a Tinder date where there is an understanding that this is a hookup, that's different, right? You want to talk about sex in that case, as long as it's consenting adults and there's no permanent physical damage, go for broke. Talk about whatever you want. But if you're dating someone with the hopes of being in a real relationship with them, maybe even for marriage, sex should not come up. Right? You have to, in addition to focusing on connection, you have to respect her pace. Most women have different paces from each other. Some women are, they hold by a 3-date rule. Some women don't want to have sex till they're married. Some women need a few weeks. Some won't have sex with you until you meet their parents. Everything is acceptable because it's their body and their rules. And if you're getting impatient, you can ask questions about physicality. Don't make it about sex specifically. Don't make it feel pressured. So what does that conversation sound like and look like? Well, first of all, you should not have it super early on. Let's say you've been dating for a few weeks and there's no physical intimacy, or you've been on a few dates and you can't get a kiss in. I think you're well within your rights to say, hey, I'm really interested in you and I feel a strong physical attraction. I just want to check if you're feeling the same way. No pressure. I'm not saying I'm getting impatient, but I'm having a hard time reading you and I just want to know where you stand. Perfectly fine, right? But to sit there across from the table at a restaurant and say, hey, we haven't had sex yet, why not? That's too bold for most women. In my opinion, and in the opinion of the many single women that I've worked with, there's a tact about it. There is a tact that needs to be respected for them to feel honored and to step into their femininity. Remember that the classic model of sexuality is that the man is the initiator and the woman is the gatekeeper. They're the ones who guard it. And before we had the birth control pill, sex had a real danger and risk to women called pregnancy. Now that risk isn't as serious, right? We have other risks like STDs, or if you want to call them STIs, right? But there's that factor of if I have sex, I can get pregnant, and then the rest of my life becomes about raising that child, especially because abortion wasn't around, and still many people don't believe in it. Many women, even if they are pro-choice, don't believe in pro-choice for themselves. They say, well, I want you to choose, but I could never do it. So there's a real risk there. And so this whole dynamic is very new. And generationally, it hasn't really sunk in with most women yet. There still is there. Now, emotionally, there's stuff tied up in that as well, right? It's not just about actual risk of having a baby, but there's an emotional component. Most women want to see that you have a genuine interest in her as a partner. Doesn't mean you have to get married tomorrow. Doesn't even mean that marriage is necessarily on the table, but there's an interest in who the person is in addition to the physicality. Again, they know you're interested. They know you're interested by the fact that you asked them out. And if you didn't ask them out and they asked you out the first time, ask them out the second time. Let women step into their femininity and embrace that side of themselves. And you will have someone who appreciates the fact that you do that in the relationship. I think it should go without saying, but I'm going to say it. You should avoid crude humor. So if you have a good BJ joke or some kind of stupid crude humor, or you saw a funny meme or a funny video that was inappropriate for work, don't show it to your girl on a date. Wait till until after you've had sex. Then you can start bringing in some of the crude humor and test the waters. But don't talk about it, right? Don't bring it up. You want to listen more than you talk. The general rule. It's amazing what happens when you listen. It's amazing what happens when you get people to talk about themselves. Look at me, for example. I work in counseling, and sometimes I'll see someone for a few months at an hour at a time, once a week, more than they see almost any of their other friends. And I don't tell them much about my life. I mean, I'm an open book. If they ask, I tell. But generally speaking, they know I'm married and they know I have 4 kids. And that's kind of it. The rest of the time, they're talking about their issues. And I'm giving them perspective. And I'm giving them guidance where I can. Or I'm helping them find the answers themselves. And what happens 2-3 months? I walk them out, kind of usher them to the door. And they want a hug sometimes. Men and women, because they feel a connection. And you know what? That connection isn't always there, right? Because they don't know much about me. They don't know almost anything about me. Sometimes I wonder if they even know my last name because they call me John, and that's it. They probably forgot it by this point. But because they've been so open, because they've talked so much about themselves and they feel seen, they feel a connection. And it's no different in dating. Let the woman talk about herself. Let her comment, show that you're interested, show that you want to engage with who she is. Listen more than you talk. Now, that's not always possible. I mean, my wife talks much less than I do. She'll tell you I never shut up. So on the first couple dates, she liked that I was able to carry the conversation. But I wasn't talking about myself. I was asking questions. She would offer short answers. There'd be a lull in the conversation, and I'd say my perspective that would take longer, and she would be engaged. When I noticed that she got bored or wanted to change the conversation topic, that's what I did. And that's how you listen, even when someone doesn't talk as much as you do. Now, when it's time, you have to be honest about sex. So if you're feeling rejected, again, loop it into the physicality. Ask what their timeline is like. Ask if there's something they're waiting for before they are open to be physically intimate. But don't try to use nice words, appropriate words, conservative words, because it will be respected. And finally, make it about us and not about me. When talking about sex, when talking about physical connection in a relationship that's new, talk about the way it's going to affect both of you, not I need sex, not hey, this doesn't work for me. That kind of language and rhetoric won't get you very far. Say, hey, yes, it's important to me, but what about you? Is that important to you? I want to be on the same page. I want to be connected. We might not line up, and that's okay too, but it's good that we talk about it now as opposed to 6 months down the line when we realize, hey, we're not so compatible. Let's figure out if this works for us. That's the attitude. Right? Again, not in the beginning at all. If she brings it up, go for it. If it's a hookup, go for it. But if you're feeling rejected at a certain point, like there is no physical chemistry, Don't walk away and just say there was no physical chemistry. She might be a lot more conservative than you are. Learn to embrace talking about it in those unique situations with care and consideration and compassion. I hope this was helpful for you. Again, I'm Dr. Jon Dabach, and I will see you next time.